Welcome to Extreme Genes, brought to you by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This week on Extreme Genes Family History Radio, how would you like to check out Great-Grandpa's hat for DNA? Hi, it's Fisher, and I'll be talking to Kara Porter, who's putting together a lab that may help you do exactly that. Hear all about it, what's coming, what it might be able to do for you, and think about what kind of heirlooms you have that you might want to test. That's this week on Extreme Genes Family History Radio, brought to you by FamilySearch.org. Discover, gather, connect. A presentation of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And welcome to another edition of Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show, and ExtremeGenes.com. It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth, on the program where we shake your family tree and watch the nuts fall out. Well, I hope you're doing well, Genies. It's been a while since we talked because, I couldn't talk for the last couple of weeks. And came down with a nasty bug right after Roots Tech, actually. My wife has gotten it now, as I've gotten on the mend, but she has been tested, so no COVID here, just the nasty flu bug, and that we don't hear a whole lot about, but that's affecting a lot of people as well. But it's great to be back with you. We're actually doing the show for the first time from my home studio as we socially isolate. It's great to have you along. David Allen Lambert is back, of course, from the New England Historic Genealogical Society and AmericanAncestors.org. He is the chief genealogist there. David, how are you, buddy? You staying well?
I'm doing well. I'm actually at home with my family and staying out of Beantown for a little while.
Yeah.
But I want to say, for the first time in history, Fish, we can actually help save the human race by laying in front of the television and doing nothing at all.
Doing nothing at all. This is it. I mean, past generations have been asked to bear arms and go out and defend the country. All we're asked to do is just stay home and let our 401ks crash. But, that's a whole other story from there. So anyway, I've done a couple of things in isolation. First of all, as this was just first coming on, I actually broke open a line, and I've written about it on my blog on our weekly Genie newsletter. And then at the back end of it, I actually found some DNA matches that exposed another line of descent from one of my Revolutionary soldiers. So it's given me a little something to do there. Oh, and then there was the experience, Dave, of the 2020 census.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty disturbing, isn't it?
Oh, my gosh.
There's less information on this than, say, comparatively with, say, I don't know, the 1850 census, which had more.
It's strange. It's bizarre. But, I'm thinking 72 years from now, my grandkids and great-grandkids are not going to be anxiously awaiting the publication of this particular census. I mean, just get on it, get it done. You're required to do it, and we'll kind of go from there. By the way, I got to mention, I'm very excited because at Roots Tech, we haven't had much chance to talk about it because, I couldn't talk. But Kara Porter's going to be on the show today for 2 segments. And she is the one who is putting together a place to analyze our heirlooms for DNA. And we're talking about envelopes and hats and jewelry and all kinds of things. They're just getting started trying to figure out exactly, what the success rate might be for various items and how far back they can go. I recorded this, of course, before everything happened, and they were talking about opening on April 25th. That is obviously not going to happen as a public event in all likelihood, so keep that in mind. But we'll be getting to that coming up in just a little bit. I think it's going to be a fabulously fascinating thing, something we can all look forward to as time moves on, because obviously we just keep getting better and better with what we can analyze. Wouldn't that be something to have a hat from a great-grandfather analyzed for their DNA?
My grandfather died 4 years before I was born. I have his glasses, and I'd love to be able to have a look at those.
Well, exactly. And if you haven't put them on your own nose, it's likely to still have his DNA there.
That's true. So the rule of thumb is never clean your glasses.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, you never quite know what you're going to find when you open a book that you bought at a yard sale. Now, in this case, someone found in an old family Bible, which is, of course, genealogically valuable in its own right, they found a World War I draft registration card for Clem Claire Hubbard of Toledo, Ohio. And with the aid of a local genealogical group in the library, they were able to pinpoint it, and now the card is going back to Toledo.
Isn't that cool? Yeah. I mean, they just went right to the genealogical department and said, hey, help me find descendants of this person. And they returned the draft card, and it's 100 years old. That is just so awesome, especially for the younger members of that family to have.
Well, moving ahead with our stories, in my own home state of Massachusetts, we lost a 98-year-old Pearl Harbor survivor, Emery Arsenault, who was on a radar station located at Pearl Harbor. So another one of the boys from Pearl is no longer with us.
Right, and a radar operator, no less, so he was one of the first to know something was coming in.
That is very true. Well, one of the things that radar does is ground-penetrating radar, and out at Bloomfield Manor in Centerville, Maryland, they have used this to find graves. In fact, they found 11 of them, and this is for a family of Edward Bork. They could tell from a 1916 photograph that there was a little fence and some gravestones. Now the fence and the gravestones aren't there, but graves still are, and ground-penetrating radar found them.
Wow. And so they're hoping to take the home that's right there in front of it and restore it as an historic landmark. That's going to be really fun to see what happens with that once things get back to normal.
Exactly. Hey, how many times have they misspelled Fisher? I mean, I'm sure they've added a C in there when they don't.
Oh, I get that all the time. They want to make me a German and I'm a British man,
Well, for genealogy, one of the tips I always say is misspell the name. And that's what one person did. And he was able to find that he had an Aunt Ruby that he didn't know about based upon looking for someone else. And then he found that he had an Aunt Ruby, but he also found that the family had a child named Ruby. He died back about 1908. They were only 5 years old. So sometimes misspelling a name can lead to finding other things. And he did this by finding a tree on Ancestry that listed this family member that he didn't know about.
Isn't that fun?
Always great to connect with people, even if it's with DNA or those shaky leaves occasionally.
Absolutely.
Like I was saying, Fish, I'm actually home for probably the near future. But American Ancestors and NEHS, we're still open in a way. Every Tuesday through Saturday from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, if you go to American Ancestors, you can find a link for our chat service. You can go in, ask us a question. Maybe we can mull over together some suggestions for you to help you with your research, because there's a lot of free genealogical time on your hands.
Exactly. David, thanks for the chat. We're going to talk to you later with Ask Us Anything. And there's just so much still to talk to you about from Roots Tech in Salt Lake City, Utah, at the very end of February. And I think perhaps the booth that really intrigued me the most was the one from Keepsake DNA. And I don't even know where to begin with this, but that's why I had to get Kara Porter on the line. She is one of the people behind it, working with the Utah Cold Case Coalition for law enforcement help, but they're also making some space in this new DNA lab to help family history researchers. Hi, Kara. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Hi, Scott. Hey, thanks for having me.
This is unbelievable to me, and obviously there is still a lot to be proven. And let's just start, first of all, talking about your background. You're an attorney, and yet you're making all this spare time to work with DNA, in large part for the Utah Cold Case Coalition.
Well, that's how it started. The lab originally was being created just for forensic type things. But then, frankly, I have a passion for the genealogy part of this. I mean, I've been doing genealogy for 45 years, and even to the point of having my mother's biological father exhumed.
Oh, wow. Really?
And, yeah, actually, he died in 1963. He's a cold case homicide victim in Wyoming.
Oh.
And so I got a court order and had him exhumed for DNA testing for the genealogy part of it. And
right.
then I couldn't find a lab to test it for genealogy. There were labs out there that were willing to test it, for like crime purposes or something. But
Sure.
That was not my interest. And that's really what led to the formation of Keepsake DNA.
And what did you obtain from your grandfather?
We got a piece of femur and a molar. And he had not been buried very professionally, I'll just put it that way.
Okay.
But we did get that. And even then, I had to pay somebody from the Arkansas Crime Lab to come down and get that. And I thought, there just has to be a better way for genealogists. And that was 4 years ago. And since then, we have been working on the genealogy side of the DNA testing.
Right. Now, this grand opening of your lab is coming in Utah, in Salt Lake City, as I understand, on April 25th, right?
Yes. It'll be a big bash.
It sounds like it's going to be, because obviously there are a lot of law enforcement people who are really looking forward to this. How much of the lab is going to be devoted to law enforcement and how much to the genealogical side for the rest of us?
It kind of depends on how many genealogists want to do this. We're committed. I mean, like I said, my mother and I have been doing our genealogy for 45 years. So if we get enough interest from the genealogy market, we'll probably just add staff rather than cut back. But I do want to make one thing very clear. Although the lab started because there was a need in forensics, there's no sharing of information. There's no, police, law enforcement do not have access to the genealogy part. It just so happens that we had a lab in place for forensic things and law enforcement, and then now we are adding a genealogy component to it. But like the machine is, in a different place, it's a different process. So I don't want people thinking that if they send their grandpa's hat in, that it's somehow going to end up in CODIS.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Well, I'm glad you clarified that, because I'm thinking, I don't know how many people would be too anxious to send in grandpa's femur and molar. So let's start about some of the things you feel that you're going to be able to create a genome from for some earlier ancestors.
The list is encouraging to us. We knew that we were going to be dealing with degraded samples, so we did have to purchase additional equipment. I mean, we purchased the world's most sophisticated technology, and we did not need that if this lab had just limited itself to law enforcement or whatever.
Right.
So we did that because it has a better success rate on degraded DNA. And of course, obviously, we've spent a lot of time talking to the lab director, and the recruits at this lab are all crime lab people, which we thought would be extremely helpful in getting DNA from unusual or difficult sources.
Sure.
Like you have to do with genealogy.
Well, in the last few years, we've heard a lot of talk from different companies about getting DNA from envelopes and flaps. And some have worked well and some not so well. But you've got kind of an upgraded system with this that gives us a lot of hope, doesn't it?
Yeah, we do. A year ago, I wouldn't have even tried this. At least in our perception, the technology was not there yet. And then all of a sudden, this technology became certified, became available. There is a new panel that's going to be coming out that is tied specifically to GEDmatch's parameters.
Oh, wow.
I mean, which will make it extremely sensitive in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
So now, though, we know that this can be done, but this is pretty new. Like I said, a year ago, we wouldn't have tried this.
Sure. At Roots Tech, I was talking with you and Blaine Bettinger, and he's very interested in this. And for those who don't know Blaine, he is one of the nation's foremost DNA specialists. And obviously, we all want to know, what percentage of likelihood for success are we going to have if we were to send in an envelope, or we were to send in a hat, or something with a piece of jewelry maybe that was kept in grandma's ear and still has DNA on it? And that's going to be a really interesting process as you put it all together, because I know you don't even have prices figured out yet, because you've got the equipment coming in, and you got to know what those success rates are so people know what their risks are, because it's probably going to be pretty expensive, right?
And the thing about the price list, we frankly just didn't give the lab director enough time on that. I mean, I guess it'll depend on your definition of expensive. It's not easy, like, let's say, spitting into a tube and mailing it off.
Sure.
There's a process that has to be followed. And for some people, unfortunately, they may be priced out of it, but we're going to do our best to keep it reasonable. And with respect to the success rates, I think it's important also to be transparent. Plus, the lab guys, I mean, they've gotten usable DNA off of a huge, long list of things. And so they're pretty comfortable. But we thought what we ought to do, and we talked with Blaine about this, and with you at Roots Tech, was we thought, what we need to do is we need to take these envelopes and do it by decade.
Right. That's a great idea.
Yeah, and then we'll post the results. One thing we haven't tried is to see how far back we can go, but we've now ordered envelopes back to the mid-1800s. And so we're going to go back decade by decade, and we're going to post. The way that we can do it, if you don't mind me just very briefly explaining, we want the kind of the souped-up panel, the one that is being customized for GEDmatch.
Right.
Right.
And that's coming soon.
Yeah, that's coming soon. It's being made by Verigen, which of course bought GEDmatch.
Okay.
So we're just waiting for that. We're in fairly constant contact with them. But what we are able to do while we're waiting for the souped up panel is we are still able to go through all of the steps up to that point to determine whether or not we can get enough DNA to get a profile. So what we do is, let's say we take an envelope or a hairbrush or whatever, and it goes through serology process, and I know people are going to say that means blood, but in the DNA context, it also means that you're identifying where the DNA is, and then we will chemically extract the DNA. Then you run it through what they call quantification. And the quant process tells you three things. It tells you, do you have the right amount of DNA to get a full profile?
Right.
Because you can't have too much. Actually, too much is a problem.
Really?
You need to have it within a range.
Okay.
Now, if you have too much, you can save some of it, but the machines that run the profiles need it to be within a particular range. So this quant machine will tell us, let's say for each envelope from 1940 or whatever, it will tell us how much DNA, and if it's the right amount, it will tell us if there is male DNA in there, and it will tell us the degree of degradation of the DNA.
Okay. And if it's degraded, can you do anything with it?
Yeah, you still can. But if it says it's really degraded, then we might have a problem. But if it's just slightly degraded or somewhat degraded, then we should still be okay.
Okay. So this first step then is basically to figure out whether you can get enough DNA to create the profile. And then when you get this new WowWee panel in, you'll be able to run it and actually create the profile.
Yeah. I mean, we could create a profile now, but it would not be the customized panel that works for GEDmatch.
Okay.
So there's really not a lot of point to it because our guys can tell from the quant process if they will be able to get a profile from it.
Right. And they're basically trying to show you, because they're pretty confident, and you want to see it, obviously, because you're the one putting yourself out there to make sure that this thing is successful enough to justify getting people to share their precious items.
Exactly. I mean, they are pretty confident, almost to the point of arrogance about this. And I was like, okay, I know that, but I want to see it, and more important, I want to put the figures on there.
Sure.
And so, we've bought a bunch of envelopes because that's been a very popular
How'd you
request.
do it?
You know what? We just bought them off of eBay.
Nice. Were they in big bunches?
Yeah, different lots, different mass numbers of envelopes.
Okay.
Because we wanted to make this a fair sample, and things that affect DNA include like how they've been stored. So we wanted to make sure we didn't have all of them from somebody that preserved them perfectly. And we wanted to make sure we had them from different parts of the country.
Sure. Yeah.
Different families. I mean, I think you probably know this, but some people, it's called shedding. Some people are shedders and some aren't. I mean, have you ever read the study about they had a water bottle and it was clean and everything, and then they had one person grasp the water bottle for 30 seconds and then hand it to a second person who held on to the water bottle for 30 seconds, and then they handed it to a third person who held the water bottle for 30 seconds. And they did that using a lot of different people, and in some cases the DNA of all three would show up. And there were some where the DNA of the second person didn't, but the DNA of the first and third persons did.
Interesting. I know you need stuff. What can our listeners help you get? And what should they expect and what should they not expect?
Yeah, and what we're doing right now, and if I can just clarify one thing, our lab director has been on board since last October, getting all of the equipment lined up and all of those things. The April date is the date that we're open to the public.
April 25th.
Right. I mean, the lab has been running samples, for a long time. It's just that now we're going to make it available to the public on DNA Day, April 25th. But what we're going to do in the meantime, because we want people to have some transparency and there's no guarantees, we're going to actually test certain numbers of items, like for each decade of envelopes, for example. And of course, we've got plenty of envelopes to go around on that. We're going to test just randomly provided, like hairbrushes, locks of hair, since those don't have roots.
Right. So can you do that without roots? It's always been, you got to have the root.
It is. Now, it is harder. And that is the one thing that we're still checking on. It can be done. We're just wanting to make sure that it can be done in a way that is not cost prohibitive. Because that may require the use of some additional equipment.
I see.
That's one reason why we didn't have the complete price list yet, just because there's different machines. But we're going to test X number of, baseball caps. And so what we're in the process now is trying to get enough of each of the subjects so that we can post it on the website and tell people and say, we tested 12 baseball caps or whatever, and here's what the results were.
Right.
We tested 12 envelopes from 1880s. and here's what the results were.
Okay, that'll be fascinating. So what all do you want? You don't need the envelopes because you've gotten most of those in big batches off of eBay, and you're trying to get a variety of things as we spoke about in the first segment. What can people help you with, and what would they get out of it?
Well, aside from helping mankind, no, just kidding. What we need help with are things that are a little bit harder to come by locally. The number one most difficult thing to come by is human bone for obvious reasons.
Sure.
But, I mean, I'll just come right out and say it, okay? It's maybe a little bit ghastly, but like if you have cremated remains in an urn, there is often bone left in those ashes. And we need to test those. Mm-hmm. And that's hard to come by, like, again, obviously.
Sure.
And so if somebody can provide for us a piece of human bone and we can confirm where it came from, then once we get the souped up panel, the one that is specific, we would actually run that profile.
You'd run the profile just to see that it matches up.
Yeah, we would run the whole process on the human bone as long as we're satisfied that it's human, which we can tell from the DNA testing, and as long as we're satisfied where it came from. We don't want anybody going and digging in a graveyard. Now, there's no reason that you would.
No. So you need that. But what other things could you use to help test the effectiveness of this process?
Well, like, for example, jewelry that hasn't been handled, like, for example, a ring where the inside of the ring has remained untouched. You know, like maybe it's only been handled on the outside. Mm-hmm. And that would not be destroyed by any kind of testing.
Sure.
So we need things like that, or an earring that has a post, you know, like for pierced ears.
Right. If
that hasn't been worn. We're hoping to get enough hats locally, but we want two different kinds of hats. We want baseball caps, and we want, you know, like cowboy hats or whatever, like my grandpa used to wear.
Okay.
Because there are different linings there.
Right. The lining's the key for hats, I would imagine.
It is. That's typically your best source.
Okay.
So we need those kinds of things. We need, I got to tell you, hearing aids.
Oh, wow.
Is something that is very helpful. Dentures, and we were sort of pleasantly surprised at how many people actually have that for their parents or whatever.
What about toothbrushes?
Toothbrushes, I mean, what we'd really like is something that isn't just brand new, though. We would like something that is kind of older.
Mm-hmm. How old?
Well, I mean, the older the better, frankly.
Sure. Yeah.
But, you know, because what we're dealing with genealogy DNA is degraded or older samples.
Right.
So it wouldn't really help to have somebody go buy a toothbrush and then use it and then send it to us. That wouldn't be as helpful.
Well, and we're not going to have anybody send anything to you without checking in first, right?
True. That's true. This is how I'm foreseeing it here. We're trying to see what we can get locally just to have enough numbers so that we can say we've run X number of samples. There's going to be some things that fill up pretty fast. If somebody has something out there that seems like it would fit in what we're talking about, the reading glasses, the eyeglasses, if you haven't handled the part that rests on the bridge of the nose.
Right. And maybe because it doesn't fit you, you wouldn't even try, right? You'd break them.
Well, yeah, or sure. Well, also prescription glasses. Most people don't wear each other's prescription glasses, at least not extensively. So if somebody were to email us, it's betty@keepsakedna.com and tell us what they had. Here's what they would get if we wrote back and said, oh, yeah, please get us that.
Sure.
We would go through the first process, the process of identifying, extracting, and measuring the amount of DNA.
Okay.
That's the first phase anyway. So that part would be on us. And normally that is a cost that we have to charge because it's chemicals and staff and all that.
Sure, of course.
And so basically we would then be able to say, we have enough to run a profile. So what do you want next? You know, that kind of thing.
Sure.
So that would save people the cost of the first part. Plus they would know if we think we can get a good sample.
Yeah, that's right. It kind of removes some of the risk, doesn't it?
It really does. There's some of these things are going to be hard to get, but we're really hoping for them. We had a lot of people with very interesting items. So even if you haven't heard us describe what you guys have, I'm talking to your listeners.
Right.
You think, well, I don't know. Is this too weird? Please email us. I have a bloody couch cushion that a murder victim's mother brought in just to say, I didn't know if you'd ever need to do anything with this. Well, now I'm going to have that tested.
Wow. That's incredible. Well, and this is, of course, part of your love for law enforcement. And once again, we need to reinforce what you send in and do with this genealogical side of this lab has nothing to do with law enforcement. That's a completely separate branch of this lab, and it's really important that people understand that going forward. So once again, the email to reach out to Keepsake DNA is Betty at keepsakedna.com. And just describe what you've got, and if it's something they're going to be interested in, they will let you know. They'll let you know how to get it there. They'll, again, review what you get, what you don't get. This is just the beginning, and basically you're helping Kara and those involved with this lab to basically calibrate what they've got so that they can tell everybody